The only thing I don't really use very often is the volume slider because I've got the MIDI pad here that has like
MIDI pad?
a dozen different sliders and all that sort of stuff. So I've got a Kai MIDI mix, MIDI mixing desk that I use for all my mixing stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
It's completely MIDI, so it's compatible with Linux, easy. The only issue is a lot of them do have third-party configuration softwares. This one's not so bad. Before this, I had a Korg Nano Control 2, which was great. The only problem is it doesn't really have dust filters on the sliders, and as a result, it wears out quicker. And the one, I think I remember buying the Korg Nano Control from Cashies for about half the cost of the original one, even though it was only $100, the main one. But that was good. But the software, you had to run it in Wine so you can configure it so that, because with that one it was very configurable. You could set certain buttons to momentary and certain buttons to not, and do whatever you wanted and however you wanted it. But it was sort of a mess. This one is a mess in a completely different way. I'll admit. This one, because there's not as much configuration, in order to get things working, I have to use a bunch more MIDI control change plugins and all sorts of other things in the patch bay that I run for it.
That sounds like a lot of work just to work with that.
Yeah, I can't remember if I've tweeted the image of my patch bay as it currently stands. I'm pretty sure I have at one point. It might be way down in the tweet thing, but yeah, it was kind of crazy to set up.
The only thing that I have to deal with is the microphone and then my Yamaha mixing board. But this doesn't have anything internally on Linux I have to deal with. Everything's done directly on the hardware. So there's no messing around with patch bay nonsense. But
yeah,
I can get why. I can see why that might be a little bit of a problem.
Well, the thing I can do about this is I can just set buttons to do whatever I want them to do. So, you got mute buttons, and there's the rec arm button, because this thing's meant for recording, like voiceover recording stuff like that.
Yep.
And obviously DJs and stuff like that use it as well. I can just set those rec arm buttons to whatever I want. So I've got I'm not going to push them now because they will activate. A bunch of patch bay plugins for reverb and voice modulation and pitch change and stuff like that are all programmed into the desk as well. Because I'm running everything through Kala.
Yep.
For all that sort of stuff, and then I just use QPW graph to patch everything together. Back when I was using Jack, I used to use QJack CTL for all that sort of stuff, but it's I don't need that now. No need to. Pipewire is good enough to work.
Oh, you are on Pipewire then?
Yeah. I switched a little while back.
I kind of, maybe I just buy one of these for the memes and just mess around with it, because this seems really cool, to be honest.
Yeah. I have wanted to get another one, like one of those MIDI pad style ones for soundboard and stuff like that, because there's a bunch of LV2 plugins and stuff like that you can use to play WAV files. And you can hook them up based on what note they are.
Yeah.
So you can buy I think at the church we've got it's another Akai brand thing called an APC Mini. And that thing is just buttons. It's just 100% buttons. It's got sliders as well. It's the same sliders actually. But it's also just buttons, and you can just program them to do what you want, how you want it, and it just works. Right now, I've just got that programmed into my Stream Pi. So I have a Raspberry Pi that runs Stream Deck software.
Oh, wow.
Well. That's really useful. So
that's honestly really cool. I've not heard of anyone using a setup like that to deal with their audio.
Yeah.
Because
it sort of grew organically quite. Things just, I want to be able to control stuff so I don't have to reach over and change to tab change workspaces so I can patch something through or something like that. Now it's very rare I need to do that because I have everything auto patching quite simply.
So with your MIDI mix thing, you can control. Can you control like your audio levels like in Linux?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I use for that sort of stuff to link the sliders to thing. I have a little piece of software called Jack Mixer,
Mm-hmm.
which is obviously is a jack based piece of software, but it works with Pipewire as well because
Yep.
Pipewire jack. But essentially that can link in and use MIDI for sliders and stuff like that.
Oh.
It's essentially a virtual mixing desk that you can link to a physical MIDI mixing desk.
Huh. Wow. There's a lot of stuff in the audio. Like the audio side is one of those areas that I am basically like the biggest noob at with Linux. I have no idea what I'm doing. The extent of my audio, like on like in software on Linux, is using QPW graph to take audio from my my capture card that I use for my console, and then route it in back into my speaker so I can hear it in my headphones, and then also route it into OBS. That is all I do. That like, but I've heard from for some cool stuff, and now I'm hearing this from you. That makes me want to mess around with some stuff. That's so cool.
I just messed around with a lot of stuff and tried to find something that works.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bunch of iterations when I was trying to work this stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
One issue I still have is because I'm using for basic volume control when I'm desperate to change something or make sure things are on the right syncs and stuff. I still use Pavu control.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever you start Pavu control and then look at the QPW graph, it looks insane. It really looks completely crazy. You've got to close that before you do anything. It's like, what is this? Why is it linking to literally everything?
I want to try that out now.
Because I just got a basic Behringer audio interface, with, connecting this mic up to it because it's a XLR mic.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty standard fare, relatively cheap.
Well, besides the Behringer and the mic, that's the normal stuff. Like I hear that a lot from a lot of stuff, but I don't hear the MIDI side from a lot of stuff. Like that's a new one for me. Because I like my mixer board. The only issue it has is it doesn't have a mute button. So if I want to mute myself, I have to grab my audio knob.
Yeah. And just twist it.
Just twist it till it's empty.
Yeah, having a mute button is work. I got the idea to do this, honestly, from the Go XLR. I went, all right, so the Go XLR is not compatible with Linux. But then I looked at it, and I looked at scripts that, like when Linus Tech Tips released that month-long Linux thing, or whatever it was. I saw him struggle with the Go XLR and stuff like that and find a script that made it work. And I realized that's just using Jack to link everything up. It's legitimately just installing Jack using patch commands to patch everything together and make it work. The only thing that the desk seemed to do was the bleep button, which I still really want to set up, and I've got to work out how to get that working.
I think, well, obviously, easiest way you could do that is have like if you don't want to be a bleep, you could temporarily mute the mic. So you have a button there that, as long as you have that toggled, then it will just mute it. That could do that, obviously. I'm sure there's a way with Python or something you can just generate white noise and do basically the same thing.
Yeah, it's just trying to get it to interface, because with the way I've got things set up, I wanted to essentially switch off, like, so when the bleep's going, it's not taking in audio and vice versa. So it's patching that so it works with just a single button is a lot more difficult than you'd expect. Especially given the way I have to have things set up with this mixing desk, because it's not meant for streaming. It's meant for like DJ artists and like full on like Ableton setups and whatever all that sort of stuff is. It's sort of difficult to make it do what you want it to do, because it's all expected to have things done in a certain way. So you've sort of got to simulate those things with basic software if you want it to work with a lightweight setup.
But I guess you can basically do everything that you'd want to do from a Go XLR. Then it's just you don't have. Well, the Go XLR has a lot of people talk about them.
Yeah.
It has the motorized sliders. Like,
Yeah, that's one of the things I wish I could find. I believe there are MIDI pads that have motorized sliders, but at that point, you might as well buy a full mixing desk.
right.
It can get quite expensive looking at the audio hardware when you go that high. And
Well,
it's not a big deal not having
yeah.
sliders. It's just, you just got to make sure that everything's set. To be honest, an even bigger issue is the fact that because there's no motorized sliders, when you start the system up, all the sliders don't go to their current positions. So you've got to like reset them all, make sure they're all in the right spots
Right.
before you do anything.